Other questions here?
Going back to the art, what's acceptable for when you're testing a game, showing the people, or when you're prototyping a game? Is it index cards and like little drawings on scribbles on a cardboard?
I'm so this is how bad I am. Like I will be scribbling as we're playtesting, and I'm notorious. This is actually I've kind of gotten away from this, so this is good. But I love using punch boards from games as like my spaces, and be like, here, punch board, punch board, punch board. This area is this area is this. Just work with me here, and then so it is like ghetto. So don't be afraid of that. You just need patient playtesters. So I'll often play with designers before I might show the next circle of maybe gamers that aren't designers. I will maybe make it look a little prettier so that those comments don't get in the way. By the time I get to a publisher, I want it pretty, decently pretty. Not like that I've invested money, but I want it to them to start kind of losing themselves in the theme a little bit. Because you want them to have a good time and get into it. So, but that's way later. Make sure the game works because, a guy we just had on Meeple Syrup, we have different designers come on the show every week, and it's like a panel discussion of 5 people. And so we had a guy who he has a Kickstarter right now called Collapse, and he hired an artist to design some cards, and then he met a whole bunch of people at Gen Con who critiqued and changed his game to make it better. But he has art now for a bunch of cards that don't exist. And it's all that time is literally in the garbage.
It's funny because he's a graphic designer.
And he's a graphic designer, so he knows that, but it's his first game, so he was really leaning into it. So it's natural. You're probably going to throw away a bunch of stuff that you work on. That's okay, but whenever you can be efficient, whenever you learn that expertise to avoid that, it makes you a little more productive. Yeah.
Just one note about art. If you do end up commissioning art for anything, try to commission art pieces that you can use over multiple things. So, for example, for Godzilla, we have Matt Frank, who is the artist for a lot of the Godzilla comic books that IDW publishes. And if I said, okay, Matt, draw Godzilla fighting King Ghidorah and Batra flying over them, right? That's one piece. It's going to cost us whatever it is, like $600 for the piece. But I can make that into 3 or 4 cards, right? Because I can show Godzilla fighting something, and I can show King Ghidorah fighting something else. It's Godzilla, really, but you don't know that because you can't see it. And I can show Godzilla first doing King Ghidorah in another card, and so you get to learn how to be ecological and economical with your cards and kind of fit all that artwork in. Is there another question?
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, go ahead.
So a lot of people now are looking at kickstarting to get their start in games, but if you don't already have games on the market, how on earth can you convince people and get the audience to get a successful Kickstarter?
Okay, that's a great question. Unfortunately, it didn't happen to us that way because we already had games up before we started doing things with Kickstarter. And funnily enough, our Kickstarters don't do great. They do okay, and they all pass, they all fund. But there are Kickstarters out there that are making major money for God knows why. Well, there are reasons though. You can't see them until you actually sit there and analyze it. So part of it is definitely getting your games into the hands of the right people. So you need to get pre-production prototypes that are of decent quality, playable quality, and especially viewable quality that they can camera or video.
Like that's the thing. You use clip art when you're getting this to playtest, but geez, you don't want that in a Kickstarter.
So there has been a very big shift. So Josh, again, I'll talk about Josh, our artist. He hates Kickstarter, or he did at the beginning, because his workflow entirely changed. Because if he was originally just, I'm doing art, and if somebody's talking about the prototype, all they need to do is show the cover, and that's good. So I'll do the cover first. But now he has to have 70 to 80% of the artwork done before the Kickstarter goes live in order for them to make a video about this Kickstarter to get money to make this game. So it is a chicken and egg kind of situation. So it's that kind of thing where you need to show as much as you can gameplay. Gameplay is what gets people to buy. Theme is a hook. Theme, you can say, okay, it's a zombie game. And lots of people, for some reason, love zombie games. So they'll be, okay, I'll watch that video. So they'll watch the video based on that. After that, a lot of people have this weird notion that they should tell a story about how this game was thought up of and who they are and all that kind of stuff. And that's all well and good, but it's really not that important until after you get through the gameplay, because people won't sit through that for another minute. They'll sit through gameplay. They'll say, okay, how is that mechanic? You're rolling dice. What are you doing with those dice? What's the objective? How is this different from every other game that I've seen about zombies? Because there's tons of zombie games out there. And then at the end, you might say, you know what, and this is my first game, and blah, 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 blah. That's fine. But really, you have to hook them, and then you have to make them keep wanting to watch and keep being invested in your product. After that, it's really about interacting with the public. If you're the Kickstarter campaign manager, you have to be on that Kickstarter campaign like white on rice, answering questions, giving feedback, getting feedback, accepting feedback without being defensive, because people are going to ask you to change things you don't want to change, getting your funding stuff in line. It's a job. It really is. It's nothing I ever want to do.
Yeah, don't do Kickstarter. It's funny, we're kind of like polar opposites on the Kickstarter debate. So he actually said is quite supportive of Kickstarter, and I am a little anti-Kickstarter. I'll tell you a horror story just to illustrate my
You're the king of horror stories.
I know, I am the king of horror stories. I'm like the bad news bears. So I'm going to use Eve, a friend of ours, an Ottawa designer. Signed this game with a small publisher, local, really excited, decided to go Kickstarter route. It was even successful. It funded, raised a bunch of money. It's a great game. It was funded well over a year and a half ago, and finally, almost 2 years, and it's finally getting in people's hands. It's a really simple game to make. It's a flicking game of pizza toppings, like Crocono style. It's actually hilarious. Top this. Highly recommend. And but it just came out, and why? Well, realistically speaking, even though they funded it, by the time they produced it and went to ship it, shipping prices changed. I mean, just think gas prices in the last 2 years, like 2 years ago to now. So literally what they budgeted, it became more expensive to a point that it basically was costing them to send these games out. So they weren't really making money, and that was the whole point. So I mean, you got to factor in a lot of things. There's a lot of work to doing a Kickstarter right. Now, with that said, I'll point of reference, look into Jamie Stoneheimer, Stagmire. He made Viticulture and Euphoria, both very successful Kickstarters. He has a website that like walks you through like every tip you could imagine for Kickstarting. If you're going to Kickstart, follow everything he says. Stonemaier Games. Look them up. If you want to Kickstart, that is the guy you got to listen to. He has had very successful campaigns. He has a great social network reach. He runs a tight ship. So that I would say.
And that is one of the key points is social networking. With Kickstarter, you have to be active on your social network. You have to reach out. You have to follow people you would never follow. You have to do it because otherwise your message isn't going to get heard. And that's the point of Kickstarter, is that you have a message, you want them to hear it. You want everybody to hear, not just your friends who follow you because of your friends, right? Because then that's all you're going to have funding you. Any other quick questions before we go? We're almost out of time. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just wondering, is it as a designer, is it worth your while to perhaps build up a small library of print and play games in RPG Now or whatever?
Yeah, you know what? We kind of did that in a weird way. So a couple of our games have been signed after they've been released as print and play. But they were only released as print and play because they got signed and then dropped because of legal issues. So that's a little bit weird. But another game that we made, it was never released as print and play, but the whole idea behind the 25 cards, like, we do a lot of design in 25 or less tiles or cards because it helps us get the idea faster, to fail faster, to get iterations of it done. And we made like 10 of them. And we one day showed them to a publisher saying, hey, you could sell a whole line of these. This is before the whole micro game phenomenon with like Love Letter and stuff like that came to be in the last couple of years. So we were doing this way before then. We're awesome. I'm just kidding. So cutting edge. We're bleeding edge. But they came back and asked us for all these titles because they knew we had them. So building up a library is good. The other reason why building up a library is a good idea is because you never know, even though you might have preconceived notions of what a publisher wants and likes, you never know what they'll see in your catalog that they may like, or if you're good friends with them, that they may pass on to another one of their publisher friends, because it's very small. It's a very, very small industry. So all publishers pretty much know all other publishers. And some publishers will say, oh, you know what? That game doesn't fit our line at all, but I know who it would do really well with. And so we've had games passed all across Europe and eventually get signed because one publisher saw it, liked it for themselves, said it wasn't for their company, but thought it would be for another company. And so those games get passed along. So networking, yes, but also build up a library because then you can show people more stuff. And if you can hook somebody's ear for just a little bit, that will give you the opportunity to say, okay, this one, maybe not, but what about this one? So have more. Versatility is very important.
Versatility is very important. I was just going to jump on the versatility side. So just on the publisher pitching side of things, I try to pitch a whole bunch of games to a publisher. So I might have like, here's my 5 games. I'll give you a 30-second pitch for each. Which one do you want to hear more about? So having kind of built a few games, that gives you a way more, like for a publisher, it's worth their while more because they go, oh, you gave me a, the whole menu of options, and then I could focus on which one I want to do. Early on, I just thought, oh, I'm just going to work on this game and I'm going to make it perfect. But often, productivity-wise, I get stuck and then I'm not doing anything. Instead, I take that game that I'm stuck on, I put it on the back burner to simmer, and I start working on the next thing. And you just go with creativity in that workflow. Now you actually have a few things at different stages, and you can actually then be productive. Like, what do I feel like working on? What do I feel inspired by? Those things that are simmering in the background, you'd be surprised how much you're thinking about them even though you don't think you're thinking about them. They come back and you have fresh eyes, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, why was I stuck here? I know exactly what to do here. So don't just focus on one game if you can. I mean, it's going to take some time. Like, start with something, but if you get stuck, pausing is not a marathon. Like, work away at some games, build up a catalog of options. I think that's a great plan. So, another quick question?
You guys are always looking for designers. What do you do to make sure you don't accidentally plagiarize?
Yeah, plagiarism. That's a great question. So I'll throw this. You didn't say this, but lots of people think this. So I'll throw this out first. This isn't actually answering your question, but lots of people are worried about plagiarism.